Those of you that have experienced Ms. Moore will know that she prefers to be called Ms. B, but she's conducted symposiums aimed at the development of people and agencies for over 30 years throughout the Bay Area for medical practitioners, community-based organizations, city and state federal agencies. And she's focused specifically in San Francisco, Alameda, Contra Costa, LA, Long Beach, and San Bernardino counties. She's developed and presented learning events focused on nurturing traumatized women and men with physical, emotional, and mental injuries. Her training portfolio includes When Compassion Hurts, Trauma-Informed Systems 101, Healing Circles for Grief and Loss, Medically Fragile Kids, 0 to 5, Anxiety, Grief, and Depression, What's the Difference, Codependency 101, I think that's one we might want to have, Agency Healing, Working Through Wounds at Work, How to Juggle Bowling Balls When on Roller Skates. We did have that, and some of these may be on our YouTube channel, and I'll post that in the chat. She is a therapist for young women. Ms. Moore provides direction and guidance to assist them with staying focused on important elements in their life. I feel so grateful to call you friend and to welcome you back again here, Ms. B. So I'll just let you take it away from here. Thanks for being here. Thank you, everybody, for being here. You're muted, Ms. B.
The number one saying of 2020, you're muted. So greetings to everybody, greetings and salutations. I'm happy to see the faces that I can see and the names of other folks. This has been truly a work dealing with post-traumatic growth, and it brought up so many feelings in me when I was putting all this information together, because post-traumatic growth is about bouncing forward rather than bouncing backwards. And we're going to be taking a look at that. So I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. We're also going to see two videos, and I want you to cross your fingers and pray that they work well. We tested them, but I just don't. I like perfection. So, okay, here we go. So greetings and welcome to this learning event. Let me get my face off of here because that'll throw me all the way off. To this learning event, I don't say trainings anymore because I learned that trainings are what you do with animals. So now I'm working on calling a learning event. And I'm happy to be here with each of you. And I believe our time here together will be helpful to those you serve and other colleagues, as well as families and friends, as we explore how to use trauma and the pain to change our lives for the better. So here's an orienting question for you. I'd like you to think about what called you to do this work at this point in your life, and why do you stay, and how do you keep going? What called you to do this work at this point in your life? Why do you stay, and how do you keep going? So if you take a moment to just drop that in the chat for me, and we'll come back to that. So I also invite you to notice this butterfly here. This butterfly is a wonderful symbol for post-traumatic growth. It happens to be one of the many things that I collect. Old ladies collect things. My son, oh my God. When I make my transition, he's just going to open the door. Come and get it. A caterpillar, however, gives up its life for the butterfly. And I'll come back to that connection to post-traumatic growth a little bit later in this presentation. So you're invited to ask questions either by raising your hand or dropping your thoughts and questions in the chat. The chat will be monitored by Beth, right, Beth?
You got it.
Okay, and I'll check in later to gather thoughts, feelings, and any concerns or any need for clarification. So this is a song by India Irene. And the name of the song is I Am Light. I'm just going to play a little bit of it while I talk about I'll Be the Light, which is the vernacular of I Am Light. My social location is in Rio Vista, California, and I am a grandmother of 2 boys, retired for 2 years from the city and county of San Francisco, where I work with people and families who are unhoused. I work with people and families who are unhoused for 9 years. The last 2 years were spent managing a grant in collaboration with the Department of Public Health as project director for trauma-informed systems that covered 9 Bay Area counties. Our goal here today is to give you information to help you recognize the strengths developed in the face of post-traumatic growth. So before we begin, however, I want to give honor to those who came to these lands before us, those indigenous tribes, those who were brought here as enslaved captives, those who immigrated here to seek peace and grace. I thank you for standing, for dying, and suffering, so we could all be present here to do the work necessary to heal ourselves, our communities, our families, as we work with others on their healing journey as well. We pray that they have balance and self-care. We also want to acknowledge the injuries caused by Asian hate that has escalated over the past few years, as well as the senseless killing of many, many African-American people, such as George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and so many others. I just wanted to name that rupture, and I'm holding a hope for the repair and reparation for our communities. A South African term seems appropriate, Ubuntu, U-B-U-N-T-U. I am because we are. Through our we-ness, it makes our collective community a priority. So again, it's important for you to notice your body and how you feel. Some things I might say to you today might make you feel some kind of way. So if you notice your heart beating rapidly, or you feel yourself zoning out, moving outside of the window of tolerance, again, please give yourself permission to take a few deep cleansing breaths. We use 4-1-5, 4 breaths inward through your nose, hold it for 1 beat, and then exhale through your mouth to the count of 5. The exhale is deep from your diaphragm. So it's not like blowing out smoke, but rather like you just returned from a full day of shopping with a 4-year-old that wanted everything they saw. And your exhale is longer than your inhale. If you can't get to 5, do your best. Your best is truly, truly good enough. And know that practice makes improvement. So let's get comfortable in our bodies and feel the chair and the space that you're in. And I invite you to turn your attention inward for a moment, just lowering your gaze or closing your eyes. Feel your spine lengthening as you connect to the earth and the sky. As you breathe in, see yourself more connected to your body. As you exhale softly through your slightly open mouth. So let's do that now. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it, and then exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I invite you to return to 4-1-5 should you notice any areas of tightness or uncomfortableness in your body or your spirit. Can we agree to that? Now I invite you just wiggle your toes and your fingers and open your eyes and come back into this space. So what happens is that sometimes we listen to the stories of trauma and we start to move out. I call it mind traveling or wandering. So if I notice this, or if you notice this, we'll just stop and say, let's breathe, or let's do an activity. You have permission to do whatever things that make you feel comfortable and that feel right for you. We know that this is not the same for everyone. And this is why we have different fingerprints, and no two people respond to situations at the same time in the same way. So these are our goals for today. These are, while it's not my intention to cause you any trauma or stress, we know that intentions have impact. Again, if you are impacted in any way, please take care of yourself. Reach out to your personal support network or your therapist. We know that everybody needs a therapist. Our first goal is to explore the topics of resilience, post-traumatic growth with a sprinkle of balance and self-care. So first, let me say a few words about resilience, post-traumatic growth, and self-care. On the topic of resilience, for example, Donald Meachenbaum, who is a very well-known leader in the field of clinical psychology, as well as cognitive behavior therapy, has written a book on resilience. And what is resilience? Resilience can be defined as the capacity to adapt successfully in the presence of risk and adversity. It's a broad term that is multidimensional and includes the ability to confront and handle stressful life events, grow and thrive in the face of challenges and adversities, and bounce back, beat the odds, and recover from or adjust to misfortune, change, endure traumatic events, and maintain a healthy outcome. Can we say pandemic, that we're being resilient through this pandemic? We're bouncing back. It's a broad term, but very closely related to the term post-traumatic growth, first put together by Richard Tedeschi and Lawrence Calhoun. And then Stephen Joseph, in his book, What Doesn't Kill You Will Make You Stronger, also brings these terms together and to the forefront. Post-traumatic growth, or PTG, is the experience of individuals who have become better. They develop a lens to see who they were before in contrast to who they are now. Now, this question is going to come up a lot, and I want you to think about who you are now in contrast to who you were before. Some of you wrote about those things when you wrote about what surprised you. One of the things that surprised me during this pandemic is that I have a green thumb. I have plants all over my house. I have tomatoes in my yard and peppers, and all the plants inside the house have names. Now, you know, I'm an old lady if I start naming my plants. But research shows that when you name your plants and read affirmations to them, because they are alive, and I live by myself, so I'm not really alone when I have my plant Felicia and Stephanie and Tiffany and Denzel. Denzel is a fine plant. So the next thing that we're going to take a look at is reconstruction through PTG, pandemic impacts, and those areas we never thought we would make it through. Over the past 2 years, masking and distancing and social isolation and death and funerals with no repast and illness. And more scary than anything that I've ever experienced in my 69 years, the episode of January 6th that some people tried to tell us was just a tour. Just naming a few of the things, and I'm sure you have even more in the work that you do with the people that you serve and in your own specific community. We have been through some things, y'all, and although we're a little wobbly sometimes, we are still standing. Post-traumatic growth is a process of reconstruction. It's also the outcome of reconstruction. It's the experience of positive changes for oneself as a result of the struggle of traumatic events. We look at what surprised you, about how you managed and deal with the pandemic. You wrote in your comments in the pre-survey, what surprised you about last year? And how are those surprises different this year? Especially when last year we thought we would be doing better this year. California is burning up. Hurricanes, tornadoes, Louisiana, all of the global warming and things that we are just dealing with, situation after situation after situation. Post-traumatic growth is such a necessary element for we need to, must to, have to bounce forward. And then we're going to redefine trauma a little bit, look at the threats to physical, psychological, and moral integrity. I'll review the standard definition of trauma, an event, an experience, and effect. And then we'll visit a different definition of trauma through the lens of current issues as threat to physical, psychological, and moral integrity. Elements of our way of being that have been challenged and force us to examine who we are before, who we were before, and how we are now through this global pandemic. As situations and places begin to open up, do you feel your heart beat a little faster when you walk by somebody who doesn't have a mask on, not knowing whether they've been vaccinated or not? knowing whether people have views about vaccination and not having vaccinations and what that means to you, your family. We also think about the election and the aftermath and several other critical events that I just mentioned. Finally, we will explore the similarities and the differences between PTG, and resilience. We often speak about post-traumatic growth and emotional resilience in the same line, but in psychology, they're two entirely different independent constructs. Resilience, like I said before, is a personal quality to bounce back from stress and sorrow. Some of us, however, are inherently more resilient than others. Whereas PTG is an enlightened mental state that comes after one is exposed to trauma. This is where we bounce forward from being that caterpillar to the butterfly, transformed and renewed. And finally, we will review the 5 domains of PTG. At its most basic form, PTG is marked by 5 indicators that Tedeschi and Calhoun mentioned in their post-traumatic growth inventory: appreciation, relationships, new possibilities and opportunities, personal strength, and spiritual enhancement. You'll also have an opportunity to see just where you stand in the PTG inventory. And finally, I'll provide some resources for you. So again, the definition, post-traumatic growth, is the recognition that however horrific our experiences, we as human beings have incredible ability to adapt, survive, and integrate to grow stronger, and then turn around and use that experience to help others. This has caused many to change the way we teach about trauma. If all we're doing is telling people how their toxic stress is going to kill them, we're only adding to the problem. If we can point to the very real evidence of resilience, post-traumatic growth in people's lives and their communities, we all become inspired, celebrating our strengths and moving forward with a renewed sense of purpose. Okay, Beth, I'm going to turn to you. You have some stuff in the chat.
Yeah, there's some beautiful things that people are saying about what brought them to this work.
Okay, love it, love it.
Yeah. Do you want me to share a few of them?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So gosh, some people have real spiritual senses of that brought them to this work and keeps them in the work, and seeing the impact. Someone, due to things that happened in their own lives, they wanted to help others, and empathy that they feel. Also, someone wanted to be a social worker, but didn't want to go to school. I hear that. But she still loves the work in early care and education. So then, and finds that her own children are inspirational. Some people feel it like a calling, and that's what their life is about: opportunity to give back, knowing that we all need help and at different times, and to give back in different ways. There's a quote that someone heard: "I'm responsible when anyone anywhere reaches out for help. I want my hand always to be there, and for that I am responsible."
Oh, wow.
So yeah, so and your own hand as well, right? So to learn to get and give support. And then there's someone that works directly with and serves pregnant and parenting people and families, and sounds like she works for an organization with people that have an incredible vision and a mission, and keeps them going. And generational trauma still lingers in our communities. I feel the calling to help parents understand it, guide them in the process, empower them to support their children by highlighting self-awareness and compassion. I don't know. I'm moved by this group. It's really beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you so much, everybody, for sharing. So we're going to look a little bit at PTG and resilience and have a brief comparative analysis in the similarities, and then we're going to look at the differences. So both of them account for emotional strength and wisdom, and we know we have to have that these days. Sometimes we think we don't have it, and then something happens that shows us that, whoo, I got some knowledge here. I have some knowledge, skill, and ability. They are positive life forces. Somebody mentioned their spirituality. Both acts as shields against future stress and worries. To be resilient means that you have gone through some trauma. You have gone through some episodes in your life and you have been able to bounce back. And then when it shifts to post-traumatic growth, you have been able to bounce forward. Both demand actually personal development. And then both enhance awareness and perception. And although resilience can help make the most of PTG, we should not equate them with one another. A resilient person may not undergo PTG after encountering stress. On the other hand, a person who has experienced PTG may not have been resilient before the trauma. It takes time and immense struggle to truly change after a trauma. There's work that has to be done. You acquire a strength, a grace, a blessing to know that you have come through something, a divorce, a death, the death of a child, the death of a loved one, difficulty, and somehow we're able to push on and forge through. Some of the differences are post-traumatic growth is often a consequence of trauma, while resilience is usually a part of a personal disposition, which I think also comes as a result of trauma. PTG is capable of changing our personality as a whole. The way that you look at things before the incident is definitely a different way that you look at it after the incident. Resilience does not necessarily call for a change. It just calls for a strengthening. And then people who went through PTG have definitely been exposed to stress at some point in their lives, toxic stress, chronic stress. And a resilient person may not have necessarily been exposed to trauma or suffering. I have a little problem with that because I think that you have trauma, and then you come through the trauma, and then your ability to come through the trauma causes you to have some resiliency. That pull yourself up by the bootstraps notion, I think is really important and relevant here. So here are some examples of how post-traumatic growth can look in real life. An ideal illustration of post-traumatic growth is parents who have lost their child due to cancer, who are raising money for different cancer organizations or charities. Survivors of terrorist attack often become friendlier and more accepting of others. Much of their behavior change owes to the trauma that they have faced. When people lose someone dear at a tender age, are much more grateful and appreciative for what they have than others of their age. For example, a child who's lost his mother knows the value of motherly affection and would likely be more emotionally mature than other children of her age. Couples who remarry after losing their first spouse often develop a deeper and more transparent relationship. The earlier trauma they have faced in the past drives them to value the present and improve the quality of the interpersonal relationships they have now. No matter how PTG shows up or which aspect of life they impact, the positive shift of energy that occurs in turning the negative into something good changes our identity as a whole. So what makes events traumatic? First of all, let's get on the same page with this. They are sudden, unexpected, or unusual. These events have an impact on the individual, family, community, both known and unknown. Let's use the most traumatic event that's being experienced in the world today. I surely did not have to expect to have to sit for hours with a mask on, or not be able to hug my grandson, or watch a friend die, or not have a repast, or not be able to go to the Stone Soul concert at the Concord Pavilion, where I have been going for the last 10 to 15 years. I did not expect that the last time I went and traveled abroad, I wouldn't be able to do it for quite a long time. This is very unusual. Some things are really, really sad. Some things are scary, but Most of them are just unsettling facts. They usually involve physical harm or perceived life that's threatening. Research has shown that the perceptions of life threats are powerful predictors of incidents like post-war mental health outcomes. People experience them as out of their control, like powerlessness. Traumatic events make us feel powerless. They're often confronted with questions of who's to blame for what happened. It may be someone else, it may be themselves, it may even be God or destiny. But people struggle with it. The question of who's responsible, very often at certain stages of development, can make people more vulnerable and to the effects of the trauma. And it appears that in talking about the military, we're talking about people often in their late teens or early 20s exposed to trauma, which is a particularly important and vulnerable developmental period. And maybe this is part of the reasons why we see so much struggle with trauma in our active duty service members and our veterans. We know about childhood trauma and ACEs, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. And then finally, certain stages of development, like I just spoke about. So trauma. Trauma is an event, an experience, and effect. You have an actual event that is extreme threat, harm, or danger. The experience of that is fight, flight, or freeze, where you are helpless to escape. Now, your response or your experience of the traumatic event might be different. I remember when they were bringing in Judge Kavanaugh into the Supreme Court justice, and they were talking about the sexual trauma. And I was frozen to the television, just like I was January 6th. My brain was saying, turn the television off, get up. It's not good to look at this, but I was helpless to escape. And one of the things that's important about trauma is that you have these effects, whether they're happening to you or whether you're witnessing them. So whenever I see a violent act or murder on the television, I turn the television off, because that image of seeing that police cop with his neck on George Floyd and his shades on the top of his head and his hand in his pocket is burned and etched into my memory. I can't get rid of that. I just can't get rid of it. So I highly recommend that. Don't witness those things, because it does cause trauma. It overwhelms the brain and body. And then finally, we have an effect of disintegration or dysregulation. I call it discombobulation, because we don't know whether to stand up or sit down. But what I want to do here is think about how we can redefine trauma, not necessarily in the terms of a specific event, but where we look at the threat to physical integrity or perception of life that is important. But also we can think about dealing with trauma as a threat to our psychological integrity, a severe challenge to people's ways and understanding of this world, and the idea of shattering the assumptive world. An author named Ronnie Pullman has written about it back in the 1990s. We also know that in general, woman's work and the assumptive world is taken from concepts originally developed by Colin Murray Parks and others, where we've got a set of core beliefs and assumptions about what kind of life we're leading. We live in a world that we just operate in without really questioning it. When you come to a red light, you stop. When you go to the grocery store, you're expected to pay for the items that you want. These are assumptions, but in some event, they can threaten other psychological assumptions. And the thing that is important in that set of assumptions is our moral code or core beliefs about morality. And traumatic events can also be seen in various circumstances as moral injuries. That is a particularly important kind of concept when we're talking about combat or policing or governmental politics or homelessness or people sleeping on the street in a tent, and how that's growing massively, where people don't have enough to eat or a place to lay their head or even water to drink in the United States of America. We're expecting people to be able to do things in a way that does not violate some moral codes that they have been living up to with the current time, uh, up to the current time of the traumatic event. Of course, the moral code is that you don't kill other people, you don't harm them. So PTSD is the traumatization. PTSD traumatization, sorry, is a threat to physical integrity, psychological integrity, and moral integrity. And it's these kinds of challenges and threats that also form the basis of possibility of post-traumatic growth. So that when we are threatened in these ways, we have to do what is called a cognitive assessment. So we're going to look at trauma and cognition because we are challenged. And these kinds of threats also form the possibility of PTG, post-traumatic growth. So when we are threatened in these ways, we do have a cognitive assessment and we rethink our assumptive world that we have been operating on. We have to rethink our core beliefs about the things like how benevolent other people are, how predictable events are, how controllable events are, how vulnerable am I in this world, how capable am I, and what kind of person am I? How vulnerable is my son? He's a Black man. He's 46 years old. He's 6'8". I don't rest well worrying about his vulnerability. He's a kind man. He's a faithful and loyal husband. He's a good boss. And yet I worry. So we all carry around the basic core beliefs with us every day without spending too much time perhaps investigating or questioning. Or perhaps we do investigate and question more. I was taking a shower this morning and the water was running and I was like, oh my God, we're in a drought. Turn the water off. I said, I don't want to be cold. Nobody's going to know. Turn the water off. You have to care about somebody else, right? So sometimes we have to sacrifice even when there's nobody watching. But in the aftermath of our daily goings on of trauma, we reassess these kinds of things because we have experienced things that make all or some of these assumptions questionable. We just notice that, hey, it may not be like I thought, even though I was quite sure of things, how things were, how capable I am, or how benevolent people are. And now found myself that maybe I was wrong. So these cognitive reassessments are the basis for an overhaul of the core belief of our system, our mental health system. And then we look at the trauma narrative. We can also think about trauma as a turning point, the narrative that we're all constructing about ourselves. We have an autobiography that we're writing implicitly, if not deliberately, about the traumas represent turning points in these narratives. So when people are talking about their lives and their experiences, they talk about the things in a before and after fashion. Like if you had a serious car accident, you talk about life before the accident and you talk about life after the accident. If you give birth to a baby, you think about life before the baby. You think about life after the baby's come and how you've had to adjust. With this pandemic, your loving husband, who was at home with you all day, every day, now, before, they would be in and out. 8 hours you see them, and then you were able to spend quality time together and enjoy that time together. And your children, homeschooling them, you're able to see, my sweet little angel is not necessarily as sweet a little angel as I thought. These are the things that we have to evaluate before the life event and after the life event. We also divide the narrative into before and after. That also, if you pay close attention to the story, it will include growth enhancing components. These are the things that cause you to feel surprised. Growth enhancing components. I didn't even know that I could do that. I didn't even know that I could walk down the street with a mask on and breathe, and then my glasses would get fogged up. And yes, I feel irritated, but I knew it was necessary. Growth enhancing events. I live in Rio Vista, which is, I'm just gonna say it, Trump country. And so sometimes when I had on my Biden-Harris mask, people would not speak to me. And then I would put on just a regular mask and they would be very happy and friendly and all of that. So I had to pay attention to how it was making me feel. Was I going to be angry with these people all the time, or was I just going to consider that they are who they are, and they get to choose who they choose, and how they see me and how I see me are two totally different ways, and move on. I always say, choose your battles. Choose your battles. My one question is, I'm going to invite you to write this down. How important is it to my peace of mind? How important is this situation? Is this thing? Is this person? Is this time? Are those words? Is this event to my peace of mind? It's key that we have peace of mind. So there are a lot of before and after events that were traumatic in the world, and it's now different. 9/11, shoes off at the airport, seat belts, smoking anywhere, George Floyd, and now a global pandemic is now another before and after. However, growth enhancing. So now we're going to take a little look at a video to tell you exactly what I just showed you. Show you exactly what I just shared.
We hear a lot about the devastating effects of PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorder, but researchers Tedeschi and Lawrence Calhoun discovered an interesting phenomenon that can happen after
I want to get the size right for you. Sorry.
Someone experiences a trauma. Specifically, they found that people often report 3 ways in which their psychological functioning increases after a challenge. These are ways that our mind can grow after adversity. Post-traumatic growth, or PTG, refers to the positive mental shift experienced as a result of adversity. Tedeschi found that across a wide range of negative experiences, as many as 90% of survivors report at least one PTG benefit. PTG does not say that trauma is not destructive and challenging. It does not imply that victims should be able to simply bounce back to a normal life after adversity. Rather, PTG evidence shows us that over time, people can reap benefits from their challenges. Post-traumatic growth holds a very important idea. We don't bounce back from challenges, we bounce forward. There are some specific areas that researchers have found change after adversity. First, relationships. Some people describe that they come to value their friends and family more deeply after a trauma and don't take people for granted. There is also often an increased sense of compassion and longing for more intimate relationships. Second, self-esteem. While some might think that experiencing trauma might make you feel like a victim, many people feel that their challenge gave them a deeper inner wisdom, personal strength, and gratitude. Trauma can even help people be more accepting of their vulnerabilities and limitations. Third, meaning. Trauma can radically change and re-engineer people's life perspective. Oftentimes, after a challenge, individuals reevaluate their purpose and mission, becoming less materialistic and more able to live in the present. If you have experienced a trauma or major adversity and you want to begin to bounce forward, there are a few elements that are known to contribute to post-traumatic growth. First, don't diminish your response to the adversity itself. You have to go through a difficult emotional processing period before bouncing forward. You can think of this like grief. You have to be able to mourn and feel before moving on. Second, the researchers have found that we have to share and talk about the adversity to process it fully. They call this constructive self-disclosure. Bottling up any trauma often leads to a worsening of symptoms, so find a safe place to share the story and effects of your adversity. Lastly, look at how your personal strengths got you through this trauma. How did you handle it well, and what have you learned from this experience? Your number one personal strength is that nothing can stop you. Right now, you're watching this video with me. You are surviving. You're moving towards recovery. You don't bounce back, you bounce forward. I hope this message reaches you and anyone who needs it. If you know someone who might need to see this video, please send it their way with a hug from us. That's it today from the Science of People. Thanks for letting us join you on your journey.
So Beth, you have some comments in the, while I bring us back?
Jacqueline?
Oh yeah, last night I was watching something that had to do with like traumas. And one of the things they said that it's like when you're called to something greater in your life, especially around your purpose, that a lot of times the traumas you go through, it's like going through the valley of the shadow of death.
Mm.
And you need to go through those valleys of the shadow of death because they're the ones going to like she said, leap you into your purposes, even in a greater capacity.
Mm.
That's beautiful.
Beautiful.
Yes.
Thanks for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Does this make sense, people?
Yes. I'm
Yeah, someone unmuted else?
Go ahead.
Somebody else? Somebody agreed totally with Jacqueline. Someone said that, let's see, they were in an accident and the material feels very close to them. I can't even imagine how close that would feel. And a lot of people have not heard of post-traumatic growth. So I think this is really helpful. And people commented on your Esther Hicks quote too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you'll see the little quotes at the bottom with little orange. Okay, so we're gonna roll on here. So let's reiterate some of the key points in the video. One of the things I want you to remember, if nothing else, to bounce forward, you wanna look for lessons. I always tell my clients, what did you learn about yourself now that you're on the other side of the difficult event? They're often surprised at the many lessons that they've learned. Once they're encouraged to reflect on them, focus on the good and recognize that it's the journey, not the end of the results that matter. Personal growth mindset is a healthy way to thrive during a pandemic and other challenges we will come to face in life. We all heard mama say, what don't kill you make you stronger. I hated that saying.
Me too.
Just to say. So now let's take a look at adverse childhood experiences, which is directly related to trauma. Now I'm going to need you to unmute yourself and I'm going to go over these people and I want you to tell me who you think they are. And I'm going to give you a little bit of background on how they made it through severe traumatic events and how they have bounced forward and deal with post-traumatic growth. So picture number one, who is that? Anybody?
Barack Obama.
Barack Obama. All right, picture number two.
Cesar Chavez.
Cesar Chavez. He was kind of cute as a little boy, huh? Okay, number three. I'm going to give you a hint. I'm surprised you don't know this.
That's Judge Sotomayor.
Sotomayor, ding, 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 ding. Good job. It's not fair. These are all kids. So number four.
Tina Turner.
Oh, people used to say somebody else. Number five.
Maya Angelou.
Maya Angelou. Say it with confidence. Number six.
Bill Clinton.
No. It's been a hard day's night. And I've been working.
Yes.
Some of y'all might not even know
The
the
Beatles. Oh, the Beatles. George, John, Ringo.
John Lennon.
What you gonna name all five of them? I mean, all four of them. Okay, number seven.
Oprah.
Oprah.
And you'll get a car. And number eight. Number eight is Malala Yousafzai.
Oh, well.
Who is Malala?
She got shot by the terrorists because she wanted to go to school and
Yeah,
she hit the face and she recovered. And now
Yeah.
Afghanistan.
she received the World Peace Prize.
Nobel Peace Prize.
Yes, yes,
Nobel Peace Prize.
yes, yes. Okay, so we all know Barack Obama was raised by his grandparents and came up to be the president of the United States. But when he was a state senator, he was in the restroom with another state senator who happened to with another man who happened to be white. He was a junior senator at that time and not as well known. And the man asked him to pass him a paper towel, he did, and the man gave him $5. So all through his life, he had to deal with these types of racial situations. Maya Angelou lived with her grandmother, who had 5 brothers. So they were her uncles. One of them raped her, and she went in the house and told, and when she came back out the next morning, that uncle had been stomped to death. She thought that because she told, she should not speak. So she stopped speaking for a number of years, only to become encouraged by her teachers and other people. And then she went on to become the world's greatest orator. Sotomayor was a child at 12 years old. She had alcoholic parents and suffered with severe abuse, childhood abuse and neglect, only to become the first Latina Supreme Court Justice. And Oprah Winfrey, everybody knows her story. And she was the product of a sexual episode between her mother and father one time, and she was born. But the part of her story that just breaks my heart is that she had a grandmother that was viciously cruel. And one time her grandmother told her to go out and get some water out of the well. 3 years old. She tasted the water. Her grandmother brought her back in the house, beat her severely with switches, and then beat her more after she put on a white dress and she was bleeding in the dress. So she knows abuse and neglect from a very personal level, and yet she gives and gives and gives. And everybody knows the story of Tina Turner's domestic violence and how I love that movie. What's love got to do with it? And I especially love the part where they have that fight and they walk into the hotel. Her foot broke. her shoe heel broke, but she got away. And what got her away, and she turned to Buddhism and is now, living, I think where is she living? Anybody? Australia?
Switzerland, I think.
Switzerland.
Switzerland. Okay, one place I've never been. So those are people who changed the world and have come through adversities. And we know that in the Black community, grandmother was the first foster care system. Some of you may remember going down south for the summer. And how about when a child got in trouble or became gang involved? They shipped them off to grandma's until things cooled down. So adverse childhood experiences, back in 1998, there were 2 doctors, a doctor from the Center for Disease Control and a doctor for Kaiser, who wanted to know if adverse childhood experiences would have an impact in people's lives as in adulthood. And so what they did is they surveyed 17,000 individuals. The circumstances of these individuals were that they were married, that they were college educated, that they were white, that they lived in San Diego, and that they had health insurance. And so what they found was out of these 10 original individual ACEs that were experienced in the home, then later they did another survey because people realized that people of color weren't included. And so the ones that will be in the square are the ones that they did to embrace people of color and look at a more community aspect. So I'm going to run through these right now. And if you want to take your ACEs exam, you can go to ACEs Too High. And if you work with clients or participants, it's really important to have your ACEs score, but it's also even more important to have your resiliency score. Because if you've gone through these adverse childhood experiences and you are still standing and still walking and an adult, then that is definitely a sign of resilience and post-traumatic growth. I invite you to take some breath here, bringing something up for you. And now these are the ones for the community. Just think if you ever felt any of these or experienced any of these. And then in 2015, UCLA conducted a study to identify the predictors of depression and PTSD among African Americans and Latinos. This screener is called Life Adversity Screener, or LADS. They had the same 5 domains, but also they had noticed that young men had a chronic fear of being killed or seriously injured. So what that means is that they acted more recklessly. They behaved more recklessly. And so some of the outcomes, if people had 4 or more ACEs, they had 3 times more chances of getting lung disease, 11 times more becoming an IV drug user. They categorize these in 3 categories. I forgot to say this first: household challenges, abuse, and neglect. And people with 6 or more ACEs can die 20 years earlier than those who have none. And so early adversity has lasting impacts, as indicated here: injury, mental health issues, maternal health issues, infectious diseases, chronic diseases, risky behaviors, and opportunities, lacking opportunities.
Someone asked Ms. B about the 2 different tests that you mentioned.
Okay, and ACEs too high, all one word,
Mhm.
is the ACEs score, the ACEs test that asks those questions. Have you ever lived in foster care? Have you ever experienced physical abuse? And it's all before the age of 18. And then the resiliency score is also down a little bit further. Same ACEs too high, the resiliency test.
Thank you.
I love this because this is like a rose in concrete. And we have, that is definitely resilience and post-traumatic growth. And I love this saying, that's why I put it up here: take life as you find it, but don't leave it that way. Now we're going to take a moment and do a little exercise to kind of bring you back into your body, because I've given you a lot of information. And some people might be feeling a little stimulated. So first I want to invite you to take a deep cleansing breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. And I want to invite you to take both of your hands and place them on your head, and feel your hands in your head, the warmth of your hair, the warmth of your head, and then press in a little bit, fold your fingers, and make sure your baby finger is on your, no, you can't do it with that one. Sorry. Just breathe in and squeeze a little bit. And these are self-regulating exercises for anytime you're experiencing the effects of trauma. And then the second one is the only other one I'm going to do. Put your right hand on your forehead, making sure that your baby finger is on your eyebrow. And then put your other hand behind your head, right above your neck, the bottom of your skull, and breathe in and breathe out. And then these other parts, the other one that I really like a lot is I put my right hand on my heart, leaving my left hand on my head with my baby finger on my eyebrow, and breathing in and breathing out. Then keeping your hand on your heart, and put your left hand on your solar plexus and breathe in and breathe out. And then finally take your left hand and put it back at the top of your skull and breathe in and breathe out. When you have your hand on your chest, just feel your heartbeat. Notice how we just take for granted our heart beating unless we're feeling a little anxious. And if you're feeling anxious right now, just continue to focus on your breath and close your eyes. Okay? So we'll be sending some of these, all of these handouts with exercises. Beth and Leah will send them in a handout to you. Any questions so far? Okie dokie, moving on.
Someone did ask earlier about, they wondered what the major commonalities were for all of the people that were in that group. And so it's like they all were resilient and all had traumatic experiences. So
yes, they all went through traumatic injury and are now doing great things in the world. in spite of their injury. What they went through became second to what mattered in the world. Okay, so this is a lot of information on the slide, but I'm going to just point out for children, supporting a child, how we can support a child who has experienced trauma, especially trauma, and help them to shift their ACEs into PTGs. So number one, perspective. Support them to see how, when the past is intruding on the present, help them to keep their mind where their feet are. Recalibration. Watch your words and see the situation through their eyes. Remove hurtful judgment terms from your language bank. Ask yourself, what would I need here? Give more grace than criticism or judgment. Teach them to breathe. Teach them to notice where they might feel tightness in their body and where they might feel calm. Ask them what they need to give them space to think about when they hump their shoulders and say, I don't know. Just give them some time. What I say is when my clients say, I don't know, it's like, okay, well, let's just sit here. Maybe something will come up. And they feel anxious and they want to move on. Guess what? Something comes up. Guide and suggest tenderly. Sometimes when you say, I don't know, sometimes they just don't know. So just suggest tenderly. Number three, space. All the time to calm down. Mirror the behavior that you want them to show by taking deep cleansing breaths or slow cleansing breath. When I sit with my clients, sometimes I'm just nodding back and forth, or sometimes I give myself a butterfly pat, which looks like this, right? So I'm nodding, giving myself a butterfly pat. And the way you do that is that the other butterfly pat, you put your two thumbs together and then just pat on your shoulders, kind of like where your collarbone is. And that's very calming. It's kind of like tapping. Predictability. Routines and schedules are important for safety and security. Encourage those children who have beds to make up their beds and do the same thing over and over and over again. Every time they come into your facility, do the exact same thing so that they understand that they are safe and that there are routines and schedules that they can depend on. Choice. Trauma takes away voice, choice, and control. Give it back to the child along with collaboration and cooperation. Attribution. Refer to their experiences as trauma. Don't be afraid to use that word. Support. Be empathetic while setting limits. Reciprocity. Give what they need. Listening, empathy, and empowerment. And use their words. When you're listening to them, use the words that they use. Don't make up your own words to interpret what it is that they're saying. Use their words so they will feel connected to what it is that you're saying, and they will understand that you get them. So here's a simpler way to explain it to young adults. Some traumatic events or crisis will cause a feeling of stress. We learn to cope in two ways: personal factors and external factors. Together, these internal factors of optimism, emotional regulation, and radical self-acceptance will lead to PTG. Our external factors of family, friends, teachers, counselors, coaches, community. What else we have here? Family advocates, home visitors, mental health providers, preschool child care providers, social workers in the building, hey, and supervisors, and all of those other positions and titles that you mentioned today. Excuse me. All of those lead to post-traumatic growth. Now, remind people that a rose can grow through concrete. Most psychologists and most lay people have heard the term PTSD. We are under the wrong impression, however, that for most people who go through trauma and severe suffering, they eventually develop PTSD. I thought that. We think the majority of people who go through traumatic, severely painful experience end up with post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD. That is not true. Actually, The research literature shows very clearly, and the empirical research literature shows also very clearly, that a huge majority of people who go through traumatic, severe, painful suffering experiences do not develop PTSD, especially over a 1 or 2 year period. In fact, almost 70% of them do not develop that, up to only about 25% of children and 50% of people who have experienced severe trauma develop PTSD. That's amazing, right? So it's up to 66% of people to bounce back. So up to 66% of people bounce back. They, in fact, show evidence of post-traumatic growth or benefit finding or stress-related growth or thriving. In other words, over time, with the adequate supports and the skills of coping that you all provide, each and every single one of you provide support and skills of coping, they actually become better people. Now, we know in some religious or spiritual circles that trials and sufferings do not always make us better people. They can either make us better people or bitter people, right? But this 66% or so become better people. The other 30% or less may become bitter people and may become messed up people that struggle with the symptoms of PTSD, like hypervigilance, hyperarousal, constant scanning, unable to sleep, depression. They might already have some of those elements going on. And surely we know through a pandemic, we are experiencing some of these disassociations as well. And we have to have compassion for people who are suffering. So it is not true that everyone that goes through suffering comes out to be a better person. And not everyone ends up with post-traumatic growth, but not everyone ends up with PTSD either. In fact, statistics show that the majority of people end up with post-traumatic growth, benefit finding, and stress-related growth. A minority, although significant, up to about 30% develop PTSD. So when we look at some of the possible symptoms and typical signs that indicate post-traumatic growth in most cases. Number one, a significant improvement in the existing interpersonal relationships, including friends, family, and work associates. Number two, enhanced self-perception and self-acceptance. PTG shields us against self-harming thoughts and actions. Number three, a marked alteration in the philosophy and meaning of life with more resilience in future stress and more resilience to future stressors, Number four, an echoing sense of thriving and heightened self-motivation. Individuals who undergo post-traumatic growth realize the importance of self-dependence and learn to live in their terms, according to Micah Baum in 2006. We have a greater self-expression and social connectivity. We have an optimistic view of life with new goals and new motives and desire for achievement. A visible increase in relatability. The studies by Tadashi and Calhoun, who created PTG, show that individuals who go through personal development after trauma are more empathetic and can relate to others' struggles better than they did before. The process of healing that follows PTG is rarely the same for everyone. Although indicators above are accurate in most cases, PTG can also manifest itself with symptoms that are exceptional and highly subjective. Now, this is a very complicated slide, but what I want you to focus on are the center of the 5 domains, just like we saw domains here. I'm just going to give you a little bit more information, and we will send this out to you so you can look at it a little bit more carefully. But what I want you to notice, and you may not even be able to see it, are the quotes at the top of each domain and the thoughts outside the center of the circle, moving from right to left. So number one, over here, I don't know if you can see my pointer, but spiritual development. Out of spiritual doubt, there emerges a deeper faith. It's contented, and I accept. Number two, personal strength. At a time when one is vulnerable as never before, there is a sense of strength. So first faith and then strength. So the word there is optimistic. I can. And number three, close relationships. Some deeper relationships form while losing others. The word is intimate, and I cherish. And number 4, a greater appreciation for life. What can break us open can also open us more to life. The word is grateful. I thank. And then number 5, new possibilities. Out of loss, there can be gain. The word is thriving. I dream. I just love that. There's a lot of stuff on that, but those are the things that jumped out at me that I wanted to point out to you. Okay, so now I want you to get a piece of paper and a pen. And we're going to take a survey. This is the Psychological Well-Being Post-Traumatic Change Questionnaire. So I want you to close your eyes for a moment. And I want you to think about yourself in the present time. And I'm going to read each of the following statements. And I want you to rate how you have changed as a result of the pandemic. Let's just do the pandemic. You can think about any other trauma that you may have more recently experienced if that works for you. So number 5 is much more so now. Number 4 is a bit more so now. Number 3, I feel the same as before. A 2 is a bit less so now. And 1 is much less so now. So I want to invite you to take a picture of that so you have the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and what that means. And at the end, you're going to add up all 18 statements, and then we'll take a moment to take a look at your score and see where you are. Does that make sense? Okay, here we go. Ready? So number your papers from 1 to 18. And then you'll put a number by that from 1 to 5. Okay, here we go. Number 1, thinking about your trauma, the pandemic. I like myself. Put in the number 1 through 5. Number 2, I have confidence in my opinions. Number 3, I have a sense of purpose in life. Number 4, I have a strong and close relationships in my life. Number 5, I feel I am in control of my life. Number 6, I am open to new experiences that challenge me. Number 7, I am who I am with both my strengths and my limitations. Number 8, I don't worry what other people think of me. Number 9, my life has meaning. Number 10, I am a compassionate and giving person. Number 11, I handle my responsibilities in life well. Number 12, I am always seeking to learn about myself. Number 13, I respect myself. 14, I know what's important to me and I will stand my ground even if others disagree.
Thank you.
Thank you. 15, I feel that my life is worthwhile and that I play a valuable role in things. 16, I am grateful to have the people in my life who care for me. 17, I am able to cope with what life throws at me. And 18, I am hopeful about my future and I look forward to new possibilities. So let's take a moment and see what numbers came up and how are you feeling about the questions and what's going on.
Do you want to invite people to unmute?
I invite you to unmute. What did you think about those questions? I'm going to go back to the other slide. So you may have changed on more on some areas than others. Scores over 54 indicate the presence of positive change. The maximum score is 90. The higher your score, the more positive score you experienced. Anybody want to share what they learned? Shamika?
Hello, everyone. Yeah, I was as I was answering the questions, all I kept thinking about is before the pandemic, I'm sure my answers would have been a whole lot different, and just the shelter in place. So I'm just grateful now that I had the ability to step back and really do self-work, self-exploring, all of that other good stuff, and also knowing what my value is and knowing that I am who I am and I can't change who I am because I am who I am, period.
All right, I like that. Yes, ma'am, thank you. Miss Elizabeth?
Hi, Ms. B.
Hey.
Before the pandemic, you just take things for granted and you just don't really know, and I didn't know my strength. But during the pandemic, because I had to be at work and I had to be in 2 offices, like I still had to take bath. So
Right.
it's just being able to, regardless of the way I was feeling, even when I was fearful, getting on BART, and I still had to do it because I believe that, and I realized that I'm more resilient than I thought I was. And with everything, and I was one of those that suffered from ACEs because I lost my mom when I was 17. So, and just having to kind of educate myself, I kind of raise myself. I really realized that in spite of the fear, I had courage. And so, and I've always been, the pandemic allowed me to do a lot of self-reflection. I know, that I'm really have the determination to be who I want to be, regardless of what people think about me. So at the end of the day, I ended up with 85. So
You came with what? What was your number?
85.
Oh, girl.
Wow.
Woo! Work it out. I love it. Okay, Miss Sophia, I see you.
Hey, Ms. B. For me, I have to say the pandemic taught me to take like a mental inventory of like what has to go, what is occupying and optimizing too much space in my life that is kind of cluttering and shelving and is really just kind of not really, optimizing my potential as, a leader, a daughter, a wife, a friend, all the intersectional layers that most of us carry and we possess. And I think that for me, these questions were very challenging. And they helped me to, think critically about where do I see myself right now? Where did I see myself in the past? And where would I like to see myself? And it gives me hope for my future, for my tomorrow. And I'm just glad that, you created a space for us to be able to challenge our minds and our thinking in that way. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Anybody else?
There was a comment someone made in the chat about that says, what if I'm not hopeful about the future? But I do look forward to new possibilities. And I know I have a community of young people and a lot of them are feeling that way, that they're worried about the future. So that's an interesting thing, but do look forward to new possibilities. So interesting.
So that's the notion of both and. It's not a concept of either or. You can't be one thing or another thing. You're holding the hope. And that's what I tell my clients. I'm holding the hope for you. They might not see what I see. And so they know that I'm standing there, that we have this attunement, and then I'm holding the hope for you. And I can't, they might get it, they may not get it, but they know that somebody got their back. And that's what's so important to many, many people. You got my back 150%. And they suit up and show up every day. They come to your agencies. They come and work with you. They come looking for you because they know you're holding the hope. So that's what I want to say about that.
Great.
Anybody else?
Someone has said that scored positive changes. However, since the pandemic, they don't feel so much positive change most of the time because it seems like a sad time. But again, it's similar to what you were saying, Ms. B, that it's kind of, it can be both and depending on the day. But there has been some positive things that have happened, like number of people have been able to save a little more money because they're not able to go on trips or the blah. So there have been a few things for everybody. Not everybody, but a lot of people.
A lot of people, yeah. I don't go to the store much, and I love Instacart. So they come, I tip them very well. They go and they get my little things and call me when they got little substitutes and all of that, you know. So those are some things that people in the community that are taking risks, that are coming out to making the possibility happen. And so that's how they earning their little money. And I appreciate them coming, because
Yes.
I live in Egypt. All right, well, let's move on. We'll send this to you. You can also look this up so you get a better understanding. I'm gonna put a link in the article that really tells you the number, where you put the number 5 or 4, which statements mean self-acceptance, which statements mean autonomy, which statements mean purpose in life, relationship, that match up with the 5 domains. Okay, so we're getting close to the end here. And so, how do I close this back up? So reprogram the mind, rock star resilience. So the author of What Don't Kill You, Stephen Joseph, put this together. And there are 6 elements that he has here. The first one is taking stock. Make sure you're safe and can manage your post-traumatic stress to tolerate levels through exposure-related exercises. Here's where you can help the client to manage stress levels. All the ones that you are quite familiar with, but often in trauma, never crosses our mind. You know, when I do my self-care, then I come back and I ask people, so what did you do around self-care? I forgot everything you told me, Ms. B. You remember it while you're in the training, but then when you walk away, sometimes we forget. So we want to bring those things to the top of our mind. So breath work, meditation, tapping, EFT, Google that, tapping. How many people tap? Anybody tap out there? Walking, noticing where you are, listening to sounds of environment. Water heals me. When I'm sitting at the beach, the water comes in and it's clean and I see it coming up through my body. And then when it goes, the water goes back out, the surf goes back out. I see it as dirty and it's taking all of my pain, my anxiety, my injury right back out to the ocean. And the ocean is big enough to hold it. The next one is hope experiences. Learning to be hopeful about the future. Looking for inspirational stories of people who have overcome similar obstacles. Birds of a feather flock together. You remember that one? The more experiences around you that reflect the idea of hope, the easier it is to be hopeful. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to rewire itself in response to the experience. So the more experiences of hope a person has, then the more your own brain will switch away from turning on automatic stressful emotions like fight, flight, or freeze to something parasympathetic. That's a lot more restful. The next one is valuing change, developing an awareness of new priorities to be more able to live in the present. Things are changing. Everything will change. Everything will change. There's a song. What's it? Who wrote that song? Donnie
George Benson.
George Benson. All right. I was wrong. Ding, 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 ding. Everything must change. You should play that today after this learning event. Music will make you hopeful too. I remember one time I was breaking up. I broke up with somebody and I had the blues on. And my friend called. He said, "What is that music?" I was like, "Oh, my baby, turn that music off." Put on something that will lift your spirits. Like I Am Light by India Arie. I love that song. And there's another song by Diane Reeves, Reeves, called Testify. It's an amazing song. Testify by Diane Reeves. Okay, the next one is identify change. Notice your own growth. We don't give ourselves enough credit for the things that we do and how we grow. Identifying change, noticing post-traumatic growth, notice using the psychological well-being questionnaire. Use that with your clients. Use that with the people that you serve. Use it with your family. Have a family conversation about your psychological well-being. Try it with the teenagers. Well, that might be a bit much, but try it and let me know what happens. Authoring, storytelling. I am a storyteller. Using expressive writing and techniques to find new perspective. Being able to tell different stories is extremely valuable. Telling a different story about a difficult situation is essential. And finally, concrete expression. Productive and purposeful work, moving from concerns about the meaning of life to the creation of the meaning in life, your meaning in your life, something that fulfills a bigger purpose in your life. Rockstar resilience is possible. The woman that wrote Harry Potter, she had a story of trauma. She had been hurt. There's a lot of elements to her trauma. She just thought that she was down and out. She pulled out a typewriter and typed up Harry Potter, and the rest is history. She used her imagination to have concrete expression. So you can do that too. Journaling is a great way to do that. Gratitude journal. Another thing is rockstar resilience. Make your bed up every day or every other day if possible. But if you don't get anything on your list done, there's not a better feeling when you come home, your bed is made up. Like, well, wow, I got one thing done, right? Let's take a breath. Let's do it differently this time. Let's breathe in through our mouth and out through our nose. Okay, now I'm going to play my last video, and this is about 10 minutes, and then we're going to come back, and I want everybody to take their cameras off and tell me one thing that you learned today. One thing that you learned today. And if somebody else says it, you can't say it. Okay? All right, so let me get this set up. Sorry. I'm afraid to make it big.
What if I told you that you could overcome anything? That there's a circumstance or situation known to man that you cannot overcome. That you are indeed unbreakable. Would you believe me? And more importantly than me telling you, if you told yourself those things, would you believe you? I want to talk to you about a critical element of happiness, success, and overcoming obstacles. Resilience, and how it's built through some of the most painful moments. I'm not sure what the ideal route to a TED Talk is, but I'm guessing that my journey isn't it. I was born and raised in Oakland, California. Coming of age in the 1980s, and it's nearly 20% unemployment rate for blacks, systemic housing segregation and discrimination, education inequities, high poverty and murder rates, and the dawn of the crack epidemic and its partner, the war on drugs, that made historical criminal justice inequities even worse. Against that backdrop, I also came of age with a mother who would become an addict and a father who, though his listed occupation on my birth certificate says custodian, he was also a pimp. Despite their flaws and doing the best that they could in a situation that exploited the worst of themselves, I knew that my parents loved me to pieces, and I loved them to pieces. My mom had custody of me as we moved and settled into Acorn housing projects in West Oakland. It's during a 3-year period between age 7 and 10 years old that some of the most traumatic yet vivid moments of my childhood would play out as my mother's disease of addiction took root. When I close my eyes, I see them all just as clearly today as they happened decades ago. Like the time I discovered my mother's boyfriend, eyes wide open, laying on the floor of a drug overdose. A discovery that initially paralyzed me in fear, much in the same way that his body lay motionless at my feet as he blankly stared at the ceiling. Like the day my mother sat me down on my bed to read me a handwritten letter that my dad had written and sent me in the mail. It would be the first time I'd ever heard the 5-syllable word incarcerated and learned what it meant. Like the day my grandmother, who took over raising me when we were evicted out of the projects due to my mother's addiction, received a call to inform me that my father, after being jumped in a prison fight, was brain dead. He would die later that night before I ever saw him again alive. Like the times I would later visit my own mother in jail. A hazy plexiglass window separating us physically and emotionally, while also serving to remind me of the fate that my father met in those very walls. I felt the pain, the sadness, the shame, the solitude, the adjectives that as a preteen meet the clinical definitions of depression. Yet when I opened my eyes, the worst of life couldn't take out the best of me, because I'm still standing here in front of you. Despite being truly disadvantaged, I stand here in front of you having overcome all those things and more. I would emerge as the first in my family to graduate college, earning undergraduate and master's business degrees, then on to a nearly 2-decade corporate career before starting my own venture. I've been from the projects to exploring a couple dozen countries across the world. From poverty to being the furthest from broke and broken that I've ever been. From tragedy to triumph, I have overcome, and even already, I have succeeded. Now, I could entertain and engross you in a fascinating story of how, but that's not nearly as important as a different question. Why? Why do I and others still succeed and flourish despite immense pain and trauma? Those people and myself, they aren't just strong or thick-skinned or good at compartmentalizing. What they are is resilient. You see, change, it's a constant in life. Nothing gives us immunity from it. Resilience is the capacity to adapt to negative change and recover from it as quickly as possible. Now, note that I said negative change, as you typically don't need any help in coping with positive change, right? You get the job that you interviewed for and it comes with a 30% pay increase. Or you find out class is canceled the day that you have an exam that you haven't prepared for. Oh, it's a bunch of A students in here, right? It's just me. Okay. Well, those are really good things. And so you don't need any help or strategies on how to cope with the good fortune. It's the negative things, the hurtful things, the bad things in life where our level of resilience matters. How we process, respond to, and act will have huge implications on where the story goes from there. whether we succumb to it or we surmount it. But understand, to exercise resilience, some change in circumstances must have happened. Some change in circumstances must have happened. The idea is to understand your belief system. Your beliefs impact your feelings. Your feelings impact how you think about things, and your thoughts ultimately impact how you act and respond. I discovered this truth not through some bolt from the clouds, some specific aha moment, but from going through and escaping my own hell as a youngster. There were some excruciatingly painful, gut-wrenching days. Days where I didn't even know how I was going to move forward, and the only thing that I could cling to was an irrational hope. A belief that tomorrow would be better than today, sometimes without even really truly believing it myself. But there I was, trying to make each moment better than the next. Today, it's better than tomorrow, without sacrificing my future for today's pain. Even at a young age, and despite not knowing what scholars and researchers were already confirming, I was laying the foundation of resilience by using the most important resource available to me, my mind. I wish I could say that the bad luck truck stopped dropping boxes of trauma off at my doorstep when I was a kid, but life doesn't adhere to any delivery windows. Change comes whenever it comes, and for as long as we all live. After my childhood, I'd go on to experience the death of family and friends, job loss, financial issues, health crisis, all the things that life has a tendency to throw at us. To show you how much of a comedian God is, He gave me a breakup, heartbreak, and distraction to start this very week as I was preparing to talk to you about resilience. Like, really? Now? So what does trauma teach us about resilience? Sometimes we need to tell ourselves what to think when our mind starts telling us things that we don't need to hear. That you can and will overcome and succeed. And not just in spite of, but precisely because of. That with the proper perspective and a positive attitude, we have power. That life is easier when you're prepared. And just because you can't plan for everything, doesn't mean you can't be ready for something. That perspective sometimes requires partnership and perseverance. And understand, sometimes it gets hard, and it's tough, and it's painful. You get tired, you get weak, and when you don't know how to keep going, sometimes all the strength you need is the strength to ask others for help. That it's okay to acknowledge that I was a victim, but refuse to own being a victim. You get that subtle distinction, that difference between past and present tense? That gives us power. Power to change the way we think, power to change our circumstances, and ultimately power to overcome. Because of my faith, I've long been a believer that everything happens for a reason. Some reasons are immediately available to you, others take time to reveal themselves. As I was piecing together my talk, one of the central questions I kept coming back to was, who am I talking to? I ultimately realized that I was talking to the adolescent me, the college me, the professional me, even the future me with life adversity yet to be encountered. The varying versions of me is who I was telling, you are indeed unbreakable, that you can overcome anything. But if you happen to find a little something in your eavesdropping to help you through whatever adversity you face, then I was talking to the adolescent you, the college you, the corporate you, the professional you, the future you, too. And more than anything, I thank you for giving my trauma a purpose. Thank you.
So we will give you some books on the topic in the handout, and also some YouTube videos. So my take-home message today is our understanding of trauma and its impact on the mind and body is still the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot more in this field researchers are still working on. No matter what, we may connect to ourselves after encountering a disaster is undoubtedly more meaningful than our usual me times. PTG let us accept the inevitable changes. It provides us with the power to direct the struggle in a way that would keep us moving forward. And as the saying goes, there are far better things ahead than any we leave behind. So I want to stop the share and come back to you guys. And I want people to tell me, we still have time, one thing that you got, and everybody got to say something or else I'm going to start crying.
I'll say something, excuse me. From great trauma, great triumph can come.
All right, thank you.
I would say that your past traumatic experiences doesn't define the person that you ultimately become.
Yes, love it.
I would say that life gives us teachable moments to continue to learn and grow.
Excellent.
Going through trauma, there's always a light at the end of the tunnel, perseverance.
It's not necessarily a train, Michelle.
I really like the quote, sacrificing my future for today's pain. I don't know, it resonated with me.
I really appreciated the different ways to bring this to the clients. That's, in addition to what other people are saying, the way to bring that to the clients is the most important thing for me.
I think my trauma kind of prepared me for a greater purpose outside of myself. It's not about me, it's about how I impact the next generation. And if I can just be spiritual for a second, I am more than a conqueror through Christ who loves me. And I know I can cover everything, no matter what comes my way. I know I will always, succeed. Thank you.
Elizabeth?
I guess I would say life is a journey, and through a journey, you never know the turns and mountains and hills you'll go through. And so we're going to always bounce forward from our challenges.
Excellent, excellent.
I really appreciate it. First of all, hey, Briana, this is Suzette girl from way back.
Hey,
hey,
sister.
Yeah. So I just love seeing you and hearing you. So this is great. I just value the possibility consciousness, and the willingness and the openness and the significance, as people have said, that we can hold the space, for people. And of course, in simultaneously ourselves. And I love how you interweaved in your presentation the research, the experiences, the books, the questionnaires, in that we're not in person. So thank you, Ms. B.
You're welcome, Ms. Suzette. Who else? I need to hear what you got. Miss Celine,
Thank you so much. Oh, go ahead. I'll go next.
Okay. Yeah, this is wonderful. Thank you. One of the things I'm taking away is just sort of the importance of gratitude and appreciation in moving forward after trauma.
Yeah. I just wanted to share that every time I work with trauma in my field, I always remember to speak of the unspeakable, even though it can be difficult and can be painful. Modeling that, I think it's really important for our clients. It's starting with us and being able to be. A lot of the terms. All right.
Understanding.
Okay, thank you. Geneva, you can talk now.
Okay. What I've learned is that after or through trauma, there still is life's purpose, that we still have purposes of life that we can still get through and fight through.
Thank you.
I love when you talked about hope and how we can be the hope for the clients, even if they don't have hope themselves. It's easy to, I think, just empathize with them, but keeping that hope is so important, and helping to instill that. I love that so much. And it was such a wonderful workshop. Thank you so much. It was so great. And I love also the Charles Hunt TED Talk. We've shown that to our residents before. And his quote, I just want to remember it, so I'm going to say it: "You will overcome and succeed, not in spite of, but because of trauma." I love that. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So the name of his organization is called the Audacity. And he named it that because his grandmother said, you got the audacity to be coming up in my house that time of night. So he's got 2 videos. The other video, he talks about how he didn't even know where Oregon was. He went there to go to school or work or something like that. He said, the only thing I knew was Oregon was on top of California. So anybody else want to share?
There's some,
yeah. Oh.
I'm just going to say there's some comments in the chat that are really great and appreciative. Sorry, go ahead, Jess.
Go ahead, Jess.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to say that I really appreciated learning about the that like circle wheel of the 5 domains of PTG. And I wrote down all the I accept, I can, I cherish, I think, and I dream. I used to always think that affirmations were kind of hokey and corny, and I'd be like, I don't need that. But I've actually been when I journal using affirmations, and it's, you know what, it works. And so I'm gonna keep using these, and having the kids I work with do these too. So that's really useful. Thanks.
I have my affirmations right on my desk. And this one says, I deserve the best, and I accept the best now. I am mentally and emotionally equipped to enjoy a prosperous life and loving life. It is my birthright. I deserve all good. I claim my good. And so what you think about, you bring about. Write that down. What you think about, you bring about. So I know that I deserve the best, even though I'm in this house all by myself. I get to come to people and share dreams and hopes with you so that you can help people. Go ahead. Somebody else was next.
I really love what he said at the end about thank you for making my trauma your purpose. I feel like, with the trauma that we go through, for whatever reason, we don't know now, but in the end, in my case, in the field of work that I do now, it's really a blessing to be able to help other families, and it becomes other people's healing through your trauma. So thank you for this presentation. And it's a new way of looking at trauma instead of depression or post-traumatic stress depression. You know, it gives us a new term, a more strengthening term. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Miss Daisy.
I'll go. So I just want to say thank you for the reminder that resiliency is very much an everyday thing. And even on the rough days, if that means that you can show someone else, kind of like he was saying in his TED Talk, I'm talking to the adolescent me, I'm talking to the college me. If you can show that to someone else and be that person that you needed when you were younger, you have the opportunity to add to your own resilience even more and to show the way. And I'm really grateful for that today. And I'm really grateful for this workshop. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Anybody else? We got 4 more minutes. You want me to sing? No, I don't sing.
Ms. B, for me, this workshop taught me a lot of things about myself, about our clients, about us as human beings, and all that to say, I believe that trauma can be a catalyst for change, for purpose, for hope, for a better future, and amongst other things. So again, thank you for creating a safe space for us to be challenged, to think critically, and to advance our knowledge as agencies, providers, learners, what have you. So thank you, Ms. B. What an honor.
Thank you. Well, thank you everybody for suiting up and showing up and participating.
And thank you, Ms. B.
You're welcome.
We'll want to give you a round of applause for sure. Again,
Thank
mind blown. So really appreciate you so much. Thank you everybody for showing up, for being here today. Please fill out the evaluations so we can know what more you want. And like this training came about because some people said in the evaluation they wanted to know more about post-traumatic growth. So something you heard today, I mean, actually, I'm going to go see if I can find Mr. Hunt and see if we could get him to come and do a little something for us. So hopefully that'll happen, but please put those things in your evaluation. We appreciate you being here today. So what, Ms. B, if you don't have anything else to say, I'll just say goodbye and wish everybody a good Wednesday.
Thank you. Be safe out there. Wear your mask. Wash your hands.
That's right. Take care of each other.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
God bless everybody.